Good evening, everybody. Hopefully, you're having a good Friday. I know I am, and I thought I'd bring you guys a little bit different story than what I usually do. Usually, I just read off um, the news, put my commentary on it, yada yada yada. But I I've been recently speaking to a couple of people around, people I know about like, hey, this looks like a housing crisis here in Canada, kind of like and a banking crisis as well. And then when I say it's a banking crisis as well, they say no. Canada's banks are way like they're they're insured. They're like it won't happen. Last time we had a banking crisis, poor people didn't leave, or like not as well off people weren't got their money back, and I'm like, well, things are happening kind of like the recession in the states. Like I've been reading up on it, and they said it could never happen in the U.S., and we're just mimicking the same things that they're saying here in Canada right now. So, I mean, you guys should definitely like start getting ready for like bad stuff coming. And of course, like mostly everybody I know are like, no, it'll never happen here. Famous last words. So, I decided today to look up the Great Recession of 2008, a timeline and its effects. Found this by The Balance, and I wanted to go through step by step what happened in the US leading up to 2007 and to the start of the crash and beyond to see if what's happening in Canada is pretty much happening right now. And then put like a final stamp into that and be like, hey, Canada, we're heading to the exact same thing as the US headed to in 2008. So I've only read through like a small first portion of it to kind of get the gist, but so I'll probably be reading a little bit more directly. So let's get into this. So from The Balance, the Great Recession of 2008, a timeline and its effects. So they say the Great Recession began well before 2008. We know this. First signs were in 2006. The Federal Reserve responded to the subprime mortgage crisis by adding $24 billion into the banking system. By October 2008, the U.S. Congress approved $700 billion, and this is 2006. Or no, sorry, my bad. 2008, mind you. Like, can you imagine the amount of money that would be? It would be trillions into a bank bailout. February 29th, 778 billion stimulus was proposed by Barack Obama, which they say averted a global depression. So, maybe. Let me know. Let me know about that in the comments below. What you guys, especially from the U.S., think about that. And while doing that, also subscribing would be an awesome thing. So, anyways, let's continue. So, heading up to or leading up to 2007 to the big 2008 crisis is what it says here. So, the Great Recession began with a subprime mortgage crisis in 2006. Then subprime borrowers started defaulting. Then, too big to fail banks, hedge funds, insurance firms found themselves holding worthless investments. Then, the stock market crashed in 2008. And then Congress passed multiple acts. So that's sort of the timeline of it, but now we're about to get into it. So in November 2006, the Department of Housing and Urban Development warned that new home building permits were 26% lower than the year before. So right now, housing in Canada, we're trying to boom housing in Canada. We're trying to increase it. I'd say what we're having is we have too many people right now here in Canada. It's a bit different. Too many people coming into Canada and not enough houses being built. And we can't build enough houses fast enough. We have to train more people. And the people we bring in if they are tradesmen, we have to still train them to our codes because they can't just like build the houses to the way they built their houses in like Mexico or Haiti or like wherever they're coming from, right? Unless they're like coming from the Ukraine or places that's kind of this a similar climate to Canada, right? Um, so that slows down the whole process. So it's not building permits, but housing is still slowing and slowing and slowing and slowing. So it says the Bush administration and the Federal Reserve did not realize how grave the warning signs were. They ignored declines in an inverted yield curve, which we've already had. Well, I looked into the bond yield to see if we have had a yield curve. Some economists say that it's manipulated, which I believe. That in Canada it's very, very manipulated. So it dips slightly, then goes up more. Dips slightly, then goes up more. I believe I have that. The bond price is right here. Now I'm not an economist, but from what I've read and researched, like this is sort of where like recessions are sort of talked about, let's say, or like it's sort of based on like three inverted yield curves, I believe. And from what I've read online from some economists say that this is incredibly manipulated. So take this as you will, but as we see right here on selected bond yields, it is flat, pretty much. Oh, it's a little bit different, but like from the pandemic, it was like low. So I believe from what I can get is it's three consecutive lows. So from July, it dips hard, goes back out, and then dips. So by January, we're still at a sort of an inverted yield curve from the start, low, and then July we're going up. We're still going up. So then we avoid an inverted curve here, and then we dip below at in January 2024. Now, see, I'm not quite sure if that's quite correct for. It's not an official recession. Like I said, recession has been manipulated, yada yada. But you can see that it's like stagnant, pretty much. Like it's pretty much been stagnant here, gone up a little bit. So all we need is like one big hit to something, and it might be just like this new carbon tax that came in. But you can, like I said, I'm not a. So I don't know if it's like these yield curves, down here, and down here. But because we missed it right here, technically it's not a recession. So we'll see about that. Those are the inverted yield curves, I believe. But let me know if I'm right about that. And anybody in Canada who has like better charts, like send them. I don't know if you can send pictures in the comments below, but definitely do, because I'm a fuzzy. But as we go down here, we'll definitely see some similarities. So it says instead they thought the strong money supply and low interest rates would restrict any problems. So we have strong money supply, but we have high interest rates right now. So that's very different. We're looking good. Canada's looking like it's like, even though we have our problems, we're still different. But now we hit this. So yeah, they didn't realize how reliant the banks were on their derivatives. Banks and hedge funds sold mortgage-backed securities, and they were backed by questionable mortgages. So right now, or actually, we'll keep reading on here. So the interest rate loans were the subprime loans, were sold to high-risk borrowers who were likely to default. These were too good to be true loans that reset at a much higher rate after a certain point of time. So the home prices started falling in 2007. It signaled a real estate crisis that was already in motion. So after this is where it starts getting bad. Because if you saw my other video, um, the new 30-year mortgage that's coming in, and they haven't said whether it's going to be a fixed for 30 years or variable rate loan. And I think determining on what this is going to be, or what it's going to be, if it's not fixed, this is going to be where Canada mimics the States. Because these 30-year mortgages, no like rich person or well-off person is going to do a 30-year mortgage. No way are they paying that high interest rate. And only paying a minimum amount for longer term. So this is going to go to people who are only paying 5%. So those are the risky borrowers. And then who are doing the 30-year mortgages, which are too good to be true. And if they're variable rate loans, which most likely they will be, because most mortgages in Canada, I believe, kind of reset at 5 years, and then the interest either goes down or goes up after 5 years. So, which these loans reset at a much higher rate after a certain period. Now, depending on what the Bank of Canada is going to do, well, okay. So everybody hopes that the Bank of Canada is going to reduce the interest rates, but productivity is getting lower and lower and lower in Canada. So I don't see them reducing. I see them either staying the same or increasing. So it's going to be higher. It's going to reset to a higher rate. Like, even if it's not these 30-year loans, these mortgages that were given out over the pandemic, that were like at 1%, 1.5% interest or something like that, now is going at a crazy, like a much, much higher amount. And the house still, and they bought the house at a much, much higher cost, which it says down here. Essentially, banks had sold more mortgages-backed securities. So we're talking about the same in Canada. Sold more mortgages during the coup than good mortgages. So did more people, like, I'm assuming more people who didn't particularly have the money or didn't have that 20% down got mortgages than people who had the 20% down. And that will come with this 30-year mortgage. Right? More people will pay that 5% than 20% down at a lesser rate. But they felt safe because they also got credit default swaps, which are insured against the risk of defaults. Which we also have something similar, our mortgage security. So it's something similar to that. It's mortgage insurance. There you go. A lot of people don't get mortgage insurance because like people usually put 20% down and have like a 15. Well, in the past, this is what they did. They had the 15-year mortgage, but I don't think anymore. So, but when the MBS market caved in, insurers didn't have capital to cover the CDS holders. And I think that's because so many people went into default, which people are already starting to do in Canada. So, as a result, insurance giant America AIG almost went belly up. And then they say the financial system or financial catastrophe spilled out from the housing system and went pretty much everywhere, bringing down financial banks, those big, too big to fail banks, like Lehman Brothers and Merrill Lynch. Now, we're already seeing, I don't want to see banks shaking, but more they're rumbling. They're mumbling right now about iffy things. So, and I've seen like BMO doing giveaways for you to like go with them all the time, and I've been hearing things about CIBC and such like that. So It's all just speculation, but something's happening, and this is where I hear from people I talk to. They're like, well, all of our accounts are insured up to, like, I think it's like $250,000. 2007, the Fed didn't do enough to prevent the recession. So the Federal Reserve announced the federal financial regulatory agencies that oversee lenders would encourage them to work with lenders. So I believe this is where the Fed, uh, let's see, alternatives to foreclosure, yeah, oversee lenders would encourage them to work with lenders to work out okay, so this is the loan arrangements that started to happen. Banks that work with borrowers in low-income areas uh, also received Community Reinvestment Act benefits. So in September, the Fed began lowering interest rates. By the end of the year, the Fed funds rate was 4.25%. Okay, so this is like the introduction or the prelude, I think. Um, so the Bank of Canada is holding right now, and depending on what happens, and depending on the pressure of that the government's putting in, that like the government's saying they want it to lower, if they might lower it as well. But I don't know if they are going to. They might still keep it high to try and keep off this inflation we still have. Because if they lower it, inflation is just going to increase again, and then they lose all of their the headway they've made. So I think the Bank of Canada is stuck in between a rock and a hard place. And yeah, even if they see the Feds lowered it, so I think the Bank of Canada, if they lower it, they're not going to lower it a lot, so they're probably just going to lower it the same. And July 2008, the recession began. So it begins in the third quarter of 2000, or began in the third quarter of 2008, as the GDP fell by 2.1%. The first clue was in October 2006. Orders for durable goods were lower than they had been in 2005. Are we not seeing that right now? Nobody's going out and buying like a ton of clothes, a ton of like knickknacks and yada yada yada. Retail sellers are closing up shop. Walmart is closing up some of its low income stores. All the dollar stores are like now $5 stores. August 2008, Fannie and Freddie spiraled downward. So mortgage giants were succumbing to the subprime crisis in summer of 2008. A failure of government-backed companies that insured mortgages signaled that the bottom was dropping out. So I don't think we've seen that just yet here in Canada. That stuff's still holding. Plus, our banks aren't really like they are regulated pretty well, so like that would probably take a lot of time. But quite possibly, some of the more private mortgage places might do that when this starts to happen. They might start going bankrupt. September 2008, stock market crash. So this after, and I'll leave the rest of this article for you guys to read because this is getting pretty long. But the rest is pretty much history and possibly what to come. We are starting to see a stock market crash. Well, no, all right. A stock market decline in some ways, and then a sharp incline. So I wouldn't call it a crash, but it's starting to look very finicky, at least to me. Though, let me know what you guys think. And yeah, like I said, the rest of this, the bailouts for banks, stimulus packages, stuff like that. The stimulus package we've actually seen here in Canada already. I can't remember the actual amount that Trudeau set up, but same thing. And I think the Conservatives said that they're gonna still have a stimulus package for home ownership. So, but it's just gonna be done a different way. So either or. Um, well, let's just keep on going down. I mean, it seems like So we're just missing a bank bailout. We haven't had one of those. So this Making Home Affordable launched. Something like this hasn't happened yet, so I'm not going to go on this. And yeah, as you can see, there's a lot left. Role of the banks and sluggish recovery, all that. So that doesn't have very much to do with Canada right now. And now we're getting to some of the stuff that hasn't happened, and we'll see. We'll see what I warn Canadians that from my point of view, and it's just my point of view, we're heading to the exact same thing as the Great Recession in 2008. Sure, there's some things that are different, but on a whole, when you stand back, it pretty much looks like the exact same thing. And the 30-year mortgages that we're implementing are looking like the same thing as subprime. They're not quite. It's not that they're bad investments. It's the way they're built and for the length that they're built for is going to be tough for the people to pay off. So eventually, as this economy keeps on being sluggish, people won't be able to do much or to pay these off, and they'll start defaulting. So yes, a lot of things like aren't exactly the same, but they are extremely similar. So I repeat, this is my warning to Canadians. This is looking like 2008 recession. And look at from where the States was before that recession to where it's at now, and that's how Canada is going to be. So we're going towards like at least 2 years of extremely bad times. So I'd say prepare, get ready as much as you can, and just do your research on history and on economics, and hopefully then you can have a pathway of figuring out how to navigate through this treacherous road we're going to go through. That's it for me tonight. I will talk to you guys tomorrow, and have a good day.